Everyone, I'd like to do a deep dive into the Three Bridge Fiasco, talking about what the race is, how we prepared for it, and how we executed the race. Now, the Three Bridge Fiasco, for those of you who are not familiar, is a race in San Francisco Bay. You start and finish off of Golden Gate Yacht Club, which is here on the north shore of San Francisco itself. And then you can go around either one of the following buoys: Black Collar Buoy near the Golden Gate Bridge, Red Rock near the Richmond San Rafael Bridge, and Treasure Island, Yerba Buena Island, which is near basically has you going around the Bay Bridge. And you can go around these islands in any order you want. So you choose based on what you think the wind and current is doing. You can also, so you could do TI, then Red Rock, then Black Collar, or vice versa. You can also round in any order. You can go around TI to port, you could go around TI to starboard. And it's double-handed or it's in single-handed. So you have either one person per boat or two people per boat. So, makes it a little more difficult doing sail handling maneuvers. And then last of all, it is a reverse handicap start, meaning the slowest boats start first, faster boats start last, and it's all timed so that everybody has sort of their own specific start time based on their handicap here. And so it's all adjusted so that in theory, if everybody sails equally well, everybody should converge on the finish line at the same time. So that's why Three Bridges. Now, why do we call it a fiasco? The reason is the wind is often quite light and the current is often quite strong. So just a couple photos from the recent Latitude 38 article. You can see even with the telephoto, I mean, there's not much wind going on here. And in addition to that, it's the biggest regatta on the West Coast. So I think we had 330 boats this year. Some years we even have over 400 boats. So it's a huge race. So a lot of fun. And anyway, so let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about some of so the Three Bridge Fiasco is also a really tough race, but this year was especially tough. If you look through the results, there's a lot of DNFs and did not finishes, meaning people just threw in the towel, or maybe they didn't throw in the towel, but they could not finish before the 7 p.m. deadline. So for instance, in the Express 27s, only three boats finished. In the More 24s, only five boats finished. So this year was exceptionally tough. Only about 90% of the boats dropped out, meaning a little bit over 90% of the boats actually finished. So don't ever beat yourself up if you cannot finish the Three Bridge Fiasco, but this year was especially tough. So anyway, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about the race itself, a little bit more background. And so these are slides from the skippers meeting or sailors meeting that is the Wednesday before the race. So this year is at Oakland Yacht Club. I think every year I've done it's been an Oakland Yacht Club in Alameda, and always a good idea to be there. I think we probably had 80 people there. So, and we still had people not following the instructions. So I really encourage you to go to that so you can really understand the course. And so let's see, the big picture, we talked about the pursuit race, so weird start times. In the More 24s, again, we were one of the 5 out of 30 boats to finish. Our start time was 9:43 and 3 seconds a.m. So 3 seconds after 9:43. And so you got to be ready for that. We'll talk about how we handled that. Start line, you can go either direction off Golden Gate Yacht Club. So the race committee makes sure that you cross. And one thing we did, I guess I'll jump a little bit into preparation right now, is because you have to be really clear on your start time, what I did was I got an atomic clock app. You can see right there. And so I don't know if the numbers are backwards, but you get the point. So it's synced to the second. And I set my cheap Casio watch. Why do I have a cheap Casio watch? If I'm doing bow, I don't want to worry if the watch rips off my wrist. It's $20. I'm not going to bring a fancy watch that I'm going to lose. I don't care about a $20 watch. But I set it to the exact time so that way we can start at exactly the right time. And I'm not trying to look at my iPhone and, I can't hold on to this and trim, especially when we're double-handed. All right, keep away from the line until you turn. There is a 150-foot exclusion zone. So the second thing to know is what does that mean in terms of boat lengths? In the case of a More 24, It's about 7 boat lengths. So I find it a lot easier to think of, okay, picture 7 boats, visualize 7 boats between me and the line. Am I in that area? Okay, if I'm outside that area, great. If I'm not, we got to get out of there. So up until 5 minutes to your start, you need to stay 150 feet out. So know that in terms of boat lengths. We talked about this, either direction, restricted areas. Let's talk about restricted areas. So the start finish line, as mentioned, is restricted until 5 minutes before your start. So 9:43 for this, that was 9:38 a.m. The H beam and the shore, which is a way just west of San Francisco Yacht Club, way close to the shore. Anita Rock and the buoy and the shore. Okay. This is Black Hollow you see right here. And then South Tower of the Golden Gate Bridge and the shore. Alcatraz buoy and Alcatraz. Point Blunt and Angel Island. These Coast Guard buoys, which are pretty close into Yerba Buena Island. You're getting really close to the Coast Guard ships if you're breaking this. And there's not much wind in here too. So you you're doing something wrong if you're this far in. Um, the end of the Berkeley Pier ruins and the shore, there is a marker here. And then I think this is channel marker 5 and the Richmond Shore, the Richmond Ferry Dock, Castro Rock, Richmond Yacht Club Channel Buoy 2, Richmond Yacht Club, Richmond Channel Buoy number 3, and the nearest point to the shore. So if you are coming up, so let's say if the current is ebbing like it was this year, and you're coming from TI, you can, sneak into the Emeryville Flats, go around Berkeley Pier, sneak back into Berkeley, come back out, assuming there's wind, of course, tuck back in again, call ley line to buoy 3, follow along here, and go around Red Rock. So this year, the winning way was to go counterclockwise. So Yerba Buena, Red Rock, and Black Collar. We went the wrong way, but we still managed to finish. But anyway, so it's really important to know. Also, it's important to know the things that are not restricted. So, for instance, there's the buoy off Point Stewart and Angel Island. You can go inside that. The buoy between Belvedere and Belvedere buoy channel marker and Belvedere Island, you can go inside that. Why does this matter? Because you get a lot of current through here, and if you can come sometimes sneak along these points and just get around the point, Belvedere Point, Point Stewart, right? So you need to know these things so you can do that. You can also go between Yellow Bluff, now called Hank Easom Buoy, and Yellow Bluff too, again, to get out of the current. So know where you can go in, know where you cannot go in. All right, so we've talked about all that. Wear a life jacket. I wear a bump cap, which is a little plastic shell inside my baseball cap. That's a really good thing to do. It's a long race. We were on the water from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is when we finally got to the docks at 12 hours. Make sure you bring multiple VHF radios. Make sure they're fully charged. If we had one of our VHFs run out of power, no problem. We had another one, we just turned it on. And as sailors, I think it's rule 2 of the racing rules of sailing. We're all there to help each other out, and that's what sailors do. We help each other. That's one of the things that makes our sport really unique. Here's some tracks. So a really great app is for tracks is called WaterSpeed, and there we go. And frustratingly, my app, so I had it running on my Apple Watch. It turned off right before we even got to the start. So I should have run the WaterSpeed app on my phone, plugged my phone into a charging brick. So that was a mistake that I made. But yeah, definitely a good thing to do. It's kind of fun to have the tracks and then once you do that, you can export them and upload them and show them to everybody. And I wish I had the tracks here so I could make our adventure a little bit more clear. Check in. Man, they walk through this clearly, you'd be surprised how many people get it wrong. So first, if your sail number is odd number sail number, so our sail number was 75, so we're checking in on 69, and you get within half a mile, and here's this radius, and so probably south of Alcatraz and probably west of Gashouse Cove slash Phil Perkins Buoy, and maybe east of Anita Rock. If you're kind of in that box, you can then check in. And yeah, by rule, you have to check in 10 minutes before. So in our case, 9:33 a.m. And then you say boat number, boat name, checking in. And you have to say the boat number, the boat name, sail number, the boat name, and check in. Why? Because there are multiple boats with the same name. There are multiple boats with the same number. So Really bad way to get disqualified by not following that protocol. Yeah, 300 boats. And, we try to make it a little less of a fiasco. So just follow the rules, please. Well, you don't have to, but if you don't, you'll get tossed. Um, and okay, so current, some basic things of current. It's often a factor in San Francisco, but especially so, when you're moving through the water at like 2 knots, when the wind is like 3 knots, you're going through the water at 2 knots, and the current is 1.5 knots. You can be going through the water at, half a knot over the bottom at, half a knot. So it really, really matters a lot. And so oftentimes in deeper water, you get more current, and in shallower water, you get less current. Um, but sometimes you get acceleration points, and we'll talk about that as we kind of go through this. But and yeah, we'll talk a lot about the currents and strategies and things like that as we go through. Oh, sorry, I just want to, before I forget, one more thing I want to just backtrack. Another restricted area is the start finish line when you're not starting and finishing. So between Golden Gate Yacht Club and Buoy X, you cannot go through there. Like, let's say you go to Black Collar and you're coming back and you're going to TI and you want to get really close to the shore to avoid the current, you cannot scooch by the shore past Golden Gate Yacht Club. You have to go up to the north of Expo, round Expo, past Expo to starboard, and then you dip back down. So again, that's you don't want to get tossed that way. The race committee will obviously see you, and that's not a good way to not a good way to have a good result. All right, so let's keep going. The current off is reverses along the shore, so you could have like ebb. I guess is shown here. You can have ebb here in the middle of the bay, and then flood starting up, and you look for tide lines, little foamy bits of water, or maybe sometimes if it's a really big tide line, you might see um, debris like logs or seaweed or wood, trash in the water. That probably marks a tide line. Also, oftentimes in tide lines, there's an accumulation of fish for some reason. So if you see seals, they're feeding on fish. So if you see a lot of seals or birds in a certain area, that too could be a mark of a tide line. Also, standing waves that kind of go up. Also, different watercolors. So, watercolor, waves, marine life, foam, trash. Those are things you look for to understand different tide lines. Sometimes it's a reversal, and sometimes it's just more of the same current, like more ebb or more flood, or less ebb or less flood. But it definitely means a clear step shift in the amount of current, and sometimes the direction of the current. Yeah, and if you're not sure where the current is going, follow someone good. I mean, note who some of the good sailors are in your fleet, and maybe look at some past results of the Three Bridge Fiasco, write down their sail numbers, and then when in doubt, just follow them, or at least track them, because they're probably sailing their boat well and they're a good benchmark. If you're passing them, it means you're in good current, as opposed to they're not sailing their boat properly. Yeah, don't run aground. Red Rock especially. There's some pretty tricky areas there, and it's just a fiasco race. No need to spend hundreds or thousands on a bottle. And okay, going through. Yeah, we talked about the pursuit race. And oh yeah, oh interesting. Okay, so right. Okay, so engine off. Yeah, right. So your engine has to be off 5 minutes to your start. And you keep away from the start until 10 minutes to your start, and you need to check in 15 minutes before your start. And I've never heard of postponement, but it's there. You just so know it. Have this. So always print out this part of the race instructions and refer to it if you hear horns and see flags. We talked about the start finish line being restricted, and um, they did not put out flags here to measure. So again, 150 feet, know that in terms of boat lengths, right? And oh, 4 minutes, your engine must be off. 4 minutes to go. This is helpful because sometimes there's a lot of current and you might just want to have your engine on, so you can just rip your way and get close to the start. So yeah, know how to use your motor, and know that T-minus 4 minutes time. So yeah, check in 10 minutes before, keep out of the start box 5 minutes before, 4 minutes before, engine off. I know I'm kind of repeating this, but it's easy to forget in the heat of battle. So write these things down. We talked about crossing either direction. This is the prohibited area. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, okay. This is kind of helpful. Yeah. So the buoys are pretty close. And, this matters because you do want to cut close to you want to minimize the circumference as you turn around, but you also don't want to break the rules. So yeah, this actually draws it out really nicely. You have these two very small buoys. These are not, I just want to be really clear, these buoys here that we see, or this buoy 4602, this is not, if you, let's see, how do we do this? Zooming in here. So these buoys are not on the NOAA chart. So this NOAA chart, you can Google it. So it's NOAA, just Google NOAA chart 18649, and then check the copyright down here at the bottom. So this is November 30th, 2019. So this is, 6 years old. This matters because I actually was in preparing for this race. I was looking at one that was like 20 years old. So um, the curse of experience, you start accumulating old assets. So make sure you have the newest one. But anyway, as we zoom in here into TI and Yerba Buena, this buoy here, like we had a conversation like, wait, do we need to go around this channel marker? And no, this is a navigation channel marker. This is not the same as this buoy right here. You can see this one is not quite south of the southernmost point, whereas this one right here is well south of that point. Okay, so it matters because, I mean, that's a lot of distance. We actually almost caught up to a boat that was much faster than us because they were like rounding this, and we're like, no, you can go really close. So these things all help. Knowing this stuff all helps. This is typically what it looks like. I mean, it can be this glassy. Richmond Yacht Club, God, it's like, I don't know, a lot of, yeah, this thing was sticking up. And keep an eye out for this thing. It's not restricted. Like you can go inside this, but it's only a couple feet above the water. And, I don't know, somebody really should do something about clearing out this channel and removing these obstacles. And yeah, I mean, you need to keep outside of the ferry pier, so you don't need to know about the ferry. Yeah, this buoy here, I I don't know. I guess you could get close enough to Richmond and then tuck back out here, but yeah, the ferry pier you got to be really careful about. And then this one, we had somebody. So yeah, so you have Castro Rock buoy, two Castro Rock. I think this is also two on marked as two, and this is three. So Castro Rock, which is easy to identify, it's just even with Red Rock, then buoy two, then buoy three. We actually had a guy going inside this zone, and they were doing great because they were out of the current. But they're breaking the rules, and we, it's one of the things with sailing is up to each competitor to enforce the rules. We did take a photo of them. If they had finished, we would have reported that to the race committee. The thing is that, we don't want this race to get canceled. And what these guys were doing since 9/11, you can't get close to these oil tanker ships here because, an oil tanker has a lot of flammable material on board, and, they don't want to risk any chance of that. And so, don't do this because we don't want this race to get shut down. And then, yeah, so this is what Black Collar looks like. It's a yellow buoy. Red Rock looks like this. It's a red rock. And then Yerba Buena Island is like that. So, and by all means, if you're not familiar with these, look them up on Google and maybe look on the images to see them from different perspectives, like what this looks like from the north, looking at the city front and the bridge, Golden Gate Bridge in the background and so forth. Yeah, and wind. I mean, the models were all over the place. Yeah, we did have some models showing 24 knots, as low as 20 knots, or as low as 2 knots. And these charts we're going to just ignore because we have much better current charts. Don't cross midline. And then also, yeah, we're going to talk about tankers, but I think the thing is, it takes these container ships about 2 nautical miles to stop, even at full reverse. So, you don't want that. You don't want that to happen. We don't want this race to be canceled due to a collision. So, and these ships come up really, really, really fast. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later with the specific how we managed that exact risk. Make sure you record your own time, like take your phone out and, take a photo or a video of yourself crossing the line. Try to get a photo and or video of the boat in front of you and behind you. There's a lot of boats. Again, they're all supposed to converge at the same time. the race committee is doing their best, but it's sometimes the boats, multiple sails could be blocking boats. So do your best to help the race committee out. And then after sunset, turn on your nav lights and then also shine a light on your sail numbers so you make sure you get credit. Also, it's a good idea. Yeah. And then hail the race committee, I think on channel 71 as you approach. So we did all these things and thankfully we got scored as finishing, even though we finished at 6:58 or no, 6:59, no, 6:49, 11 minutes before the deadline. And you got to, if they're retiring, got to tell the race committee, okay. And if someone else tries to retire over VHF, tell them, dude, send a text. So put the text message, the text number is in the race instructions. I don't know why they didn't put it in here, but anyway, good thing to program in your phone beforehand. Um, and yep. So let's just keep on going through here. Yep. And another thing, I guess, is boats are sailing double-handed, single-handed. This isn't like a team race where you're pushing people really hard. It's all just avoid getting close to people. It's a long race. There is no reason to be pushing things close. And we're going to talk about food, water, all that, and layers. And anchor, we'll talk about that, and plenty of fuel. And there we go. Okay, so let us go ahead. Now we've been talking about the race itself and the race instructions. Now let's go ahead and talk about what we did. And so, oh, right, how do we prepare for it? Okay, so let's talk about that. So the first thing is what we were doing before every kind of in the few days going into the race was we got up predict wind and then got up sail drone. And literally, I had what you see here. So with predict wind zoomed into the course area and sail flow, I'm sorry, predict wind in the course area, sail drone also zoomed into the course area. So what do we have here? On the left, we have wind direction, and you can see this is real time as I'm recording this the Tuesday after. So you can see, I don't know, this is 7 knots here, and purple means very little wind. So this is wind for right now, and this is current for right now, and you can go off into the future as well. And this is Sail Drone. Both of these are subscription services. Definitely recommend subscribing to them. Sail Drone was created by, there's a lot of current prediction models. I know the guy who did the model for this, super thoughtful guy. He's actually a professor at Stanford who studies currents in San Francisco Bay. So he's one of the experts. And then what we would do is we'd kind of go through and I'd go through and I'd say, okay, and I'll kind of walk you through very briefly kind of one of the videos, but like I think the Monday before I said, okay, here's the forecast that we're looking at on Saturday, and here's the current. And I'd kind of step through hour by hour. So I'd say, okay, let's look at, if this is, let's say the race for this upcoming Saturday, I'd say, okay, so our start is at 9:43. So let's just look at the wind forecast for 10 o'clock and let's look at the current forecast for 10 o'clock and let's see, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Saturday. Why is this? I don't know, man. Why is this Saturday? Saturday? Huh. Oh, Saturday at 3 p.m. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's like Saturday at 10 a.m. So I'd say, okay, so current is, and this is the currents kind of flip every week, more or less. So you can see for this Saturday, it's mostly flooding, and that's because last Saturday of the regatta, it was mostly ebbing. So so current models are very predictable. Why? Because it's the moon. We know what the moon is doing. And the moon drives the currents. So by and large, the currents are largely predictable. Why do I say largely? Because there is runoff. And flowing through the North Bay, Raccoon Straits, and around the tip of Angel Island, you literally have the entire Northern California watershed from Redding to Bakersfield and the entire Sierra Nevada, I don't know, 500 miles, 600 miles of mountains flowing through this point, through these parts of the bay, and of course through the Golden Gate. So if we have a big rainfall beforehand, that can amplify the effects of the ebb, and it can decrease the effects of the flood. And sometimes it can even, like, if you think of the tides as kind of a pendulum clock, sometimes it can even throw off the whole pendulum, and you just have to observe what you can. But this is like if you had like a, massive storm, with a lot of rain, not snow, but rain in the Sierras kind of flowing through. So that's one kind of caveat. We did not have that this year. It's been very dry. So it was very predictable currents. Okay. Wind, on the other hand, very hard to predict, even 24 hours before. But so we'd say lots of caveats, but at least it started to give us some fluency. So we'd go through and we'd say, okay, if the model holds, this is what we want to do. Maybe we want to do, TI, then Red Rock, then Black Collar, or whatever. And so record a video just like this, and then we'd go through, okay, that's what we want to do. So we'd kind of look at 10, we'd look and okay, so this is what things are looking like that's what things are looking like at 10 and then 11. And we kind of go through and just kind of plan through the race. Did that like 3 times beforehand. And it was good just because one thing we saw was that the forecasts were all over, meaning we don't know what to expect. Keep your eyes open. Don't rely on the forecast. Even the lack of a signal is itself a signal in the sense that just you got to just pay attention, keep your head open, and ignore the models that you see and just kind of wing it based on what you see on the course the day of as you're racing. About 36 hours to go, we switched from the PWG model, which is, I guess, the best long range model, more or less. I'm not an expert, but to the HRRR model, which is great. So you can see HRRR is blank for Saturday. Why? Because it only goes out like 36 hours. But you can see it does work, for, in this case, it's a Tuesday. This is tomorrow at 5 a.m. and HRRR works. So HRRR stands for High Res Rapid Refresh, created maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago by the good folks at NOAA, National Oceanographic and Aeronautic Administration. And a lot of scientists, a lot of work's gone into this model, and it refreshes every hour. So great stuff. Use it when you're within that 36 or 48 hour window that it works in. Okay, so we'd record it just like I'm recording this, and kind of planning stuff through. So we're starting to get fluency in terms of different scenarios and planning. And that really did help us on race day. And you can see this is just one of those things in Loom, which I'm using to record this video, and I recorded that video. Other stuff we did to prepare. So, different people wear different things, but the race day, the forecast was for it to be pretty cold, like 48 degrees Fahrenheit, up to maybe a high of 52 degrees Fahrenheit. So I really like this stuff from Rooster Sailing, British-based company, so they know a thing or two about bad weather. I wore the hot legs and the hot top and wore layers on top of it. But this stuff is pretty cool. It's titanium lined neoprene. So it's kind of the nuclear option in terms of staying warm. And so that was my base layer. And then I could layer on, a couple layers of fleece and foulies, and I was good to go. Again, we start at 8 in the morning. It's chilly. We end at 8 at night. It gets chilly. But in the middle of the day, it kind of felt like 60 or 65. So it's nice to kind of get down to this layer. I really like the Dewberry boots. If it's raining or you get wet, your feet, nice, warm, heavy boots. For keel boats, they're great. They protect you against anything that might, if you bash your toe, you just stay comfortable. Gloves. We use light air sheets, really skinny Spectra sheets. So, and the thing is, if the wind had picked up to 15, 20 knots, I'd get a slice in my hand. You don't want that. You want your hands to be protected. You want to be ready for anything. So I just like these simple gardening gloves. So while, the Rooster stuff is pretty expensive, the boots are really expensive, but they'll last you probably a decade or more. The gloves are, your basic literal garden variety gardening gloves that you could get in any hardware store or here on Amazon in a 12 pack for $36. And I think they last me a year or two per glove, even with heavy use. So that's good stuff. They're nice and sticky too, which is, again, really good in those skinny light air sheets. The light air sheets were essential for getting around Red Rock. We would not have gotten around Red Rock if we hadn't used really skinny sheets. Again, I mentioned cheap watch, $23. You don't worry about it if it just scrapes off. Don't wear your fancy watch exposed. You'll just be upset. Sunscreen. you're out there for a long time. When you get to be an old guy like me, you start getting friends who start going into salami mode, where bits and bits start getting sliced off to get rid of the cancerous skin. That really sucks. It's not fun. So yes, this Harkin stuff is really expensive. It's a lot less expensive than skin cancer treatments. So just do it. And they also make this stuff that washes off. Get that, because even with like face scrub, this stuff doesn't come off. This stuff is pretty damn amazing in terms of how it stays on. Also, I like wearing one of these neck gaiters as well. I think I don't know, I've got a white one. I think I've got this color. It's good stuff just to keep everything protected. And I'll wear the sunscreen under that as well. Again, we're on the water for a long time, so I really like these 48-ounce bottles. Yeah, just be ready for anything. If your motor conks out and you got to sail in and you get in at noon or at midnight, like you have enough water, you're good to go. We got to be ready for anything. Like these Kirkland bars at Costco are great. I actually put two or three of them into my life jacket. Again, we're double-handed. You just want to be able to take some out of your life jacket, eat while you're trimming the sail or steering or whatever. You can't tuck into a nice meal or anything like that. You're racing the whole time. Um, Headlamp. This is another good one. It has a battery pack in the back. It's got a billion lights. You look like something out of the Matrix, but it is really good. Especially, we use the headlamp extensively because while we were sailing upwind, my skipper would be steering, and then I'd be shining the headlamp on the telltale so he could steer optimally. And if you want to be able to see puffs in the water or stuff in the water, tide lines, you just want to be able to have really good headlamp with a lot of LEDs, so you can bring a lot of light to bear on the problem. You have to have your phone charging, so bring a battery pack, leave it plugged in. And then we also had the Navionics app on the iPad. And again, the app, it burns through a lot of battery, so again, you want your battery pack to power your iPod, which has your Navionics. Why is this good? Even if you have a paper map, the reason the Navionics is good is, like, we were at one point, we were out in the middle. We literally got flushed out. We were about here, and we saw a freighter coming in, and the freighter was probably out here. I mean, it was several miles offshore, but they come in fast. So even if they're like way out on the horizon, they're just a little speck. That's when you got to take action, because it takes them, miles to stop. And when we're sailing, we're not going very fast, right? We had no wind. We're just getting pushed out the gate. And so we were just in the outbound lane of the ships. How do we know that? Because we had the Navionics app. So we knew we were probably okay, assuming that the ship followed the directions. And then lastly, we had the water speed app, and this is on an iPhone, works on an iPhone, works on an Apple Watch. I made the mistake of using it on my Apple Watch. It accidentally turned off midway through. So these are my tracks from where we started, San Francisco Yacht Club, turned off, middle of the bay. Didn't even capture the start. So do it on your phone, below decks, charged with a brick. But the water speed app is phenomenal and collects a lot of material. It syncs with Strava, syncs with your Apple Health. But you can see the number of jibes you made, your best speed coming out of your tacks, your best speeds. This is more for dinghy sailing, laser sailing, your heart rate, things like that. So lots of cool stuff in addition to the tracks. And you can see your speed, your heart rate. Great stuff. Highly recommended. It's called Water Speed. And they have the web app, they have the regular app. Okay, so cool. So that's the prep. Now let's talk about the race itself. So we made the decision to go around, based on our analysis, we made the decision to go around Blackwater first, and then zoom out a little here, and then Red Rock, and then Treasure Island, or TI. And it's our best estimate. It was wrong. We still finished. Now, what we did was, again, so when we started, let's just kind of look at, so here are the currents. So these are the currents that we were looking at 10 a.m. And so our start was 9:43. So this is basically what it was. So we had ebb going out, and you can see more intense orange means more current. And so really kind of pulsing strongly here between Aquatic Park and Alcatraz, and then getting really strong at the gate and also pulsing out strongly here as well. And so we kind of zipped. Okay, so what do we do? Hang on. Let's just kind of zoom in here a little bit. Okay. All right. All right. So here's X buoy, and this is one end of the starting line, and then Golden Gate Yacht Club is right here. So it's basically a line going straight south from here. So it was about I don't know 3 minutes to go, and we said, okay, there's not much wind. Rule number one: always stay up current of where you want to start. Always. I mean, and literally, like as we were going across the bay, we were up current. Like we were aiming for a point to the left, facing south, a point to the left of here, because when you kill your engine, you almost want to think about, okay, if this is sort of the exclusion zone, this is 7 boat lengths away. Oh, sorry. One more thing on the prep side. I'm sorry. Before we dive into the tactics, one more thing. It's a really good idea to do this kind of a cheat sheet because there's a lot. If you look at the jibe set, there's a lot of things to look at beforehand, and more stuff than you can possibly. You want to be flipping through. You want to print out the race instructions, the notice of race, so you have it. Print it. Don't have it on your phone because you might not have good coverage. Your phone might be out of juice, might be out of battery. But you do want to distill everything into a 1 or 2 page cheat sheet that you print, put into a Ziploc bag. And so these are all the things. So our deadline to check in was 10 minutes before, although it might have been 15 minutes before. I might have gotten that wrong. And then we can enter the starting area and then engine off. I should have put an engine off in at 9:39. Do that next year. 9:43:03, that's our start. And then that's sunset, so we need to hail the race committee and then deadline to finish. And then also know what other boats to watch. So we looked at the other boats. Bill Erkelin's, he's won this race, I think, 4 times before. So sail number, I probably even could have put in like hull if I knew the boat. This is like my first time racing Moors in like 20 years. So if I knew his hull color, probably would be good to put that in, or spinnaker color. But anyway, we put in a sail number. Won the race 4 times before, good guy to watch. Morgan Larson, great sailor, multi-world champion, pro sailor. Steve Bordeaux, Olympic silver medalist. He's been top 3 at nationals and the Moors. Rich Bergson also has done really well in this race. So these are kind of the boats that we were going to keep an eye on. And sometimes you're like, I don't know which way to go. Well, you know, just like, okay, which way is Erkelin's going? Okay, fine. Let's just do that. Follow him. And then writing out the restricted areas, and then also knowing where it's not restricted as well, because you often want to tuck in close to shore. So, all right, so a little distraction there. Thanks for bearing with me, but this is a really good thing I wanted to make sure all of you knew. Okay, so we were kind of hanging out, sort of maybe 10 boat lengths, 15 boat lengths up current, circling around, circling around, circling around. At about 3 minutes to go, we said, I think we can do it. I think we can make our final approach. And we started going. And then as we got closer, we're like, uh-oh. And we turned around, and then we turned around, and we drifted. We were like about 5 boat lengths past the mark here. It's like, dang it. So we had to sail, 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 sail. And that took us about 2 or 3 minutes, and then just jibed around. By that time, John Siegel won one of the boats, and then Bill Erkelin's were maybe 2 minutes and 1 minute ahead of us. But again, don't throw in the towel. It's a long race. Now, one of the things it was the wind was pretty much a northerly, and so one really key thing I want you to know is that the snow fence effect. Now, we don't have snow in the Bay Area usually, but what that means is as the wind kind of goes along and it hits from the cold water to the relatively warm asphalt of San Francisco, an urban environment, the wind lifts up. And so it starts lifting up. The wind starts lifting up from the surface well before the shore. And so what that means is, you might see it like 3 knots of wind out here, 2.5 knots of wind here, and like even down here, it might be 2 knots, just, 3 boat lengths to leeward. So you got to be on that windwardmost lane of boats. And so we passed, there were 2 boats ahead of us, 2 or 3 boats ahead of us. We zipped right past them. They set their spinnakers and they couldn't stay high. We jib reached, stayed high, went even a little bit above run line here to Blackcollar. kind of a little bit high, past two or three boats, and we were, pretty much right. We were maybe, I don't know, 30 seconds behind Bill Erkelin's at Black Collar. So we came in, and there's all kinds of boats. There was an Olson 25. We committed to going to leeward of them. We stayed in their gas. Maybe in retrospect, we should have gone over them because we probably could have passed over them. But what happens is as you start getting closer here, you want to be high, but then you want to start dipping down. You don't want to miss and having to go sail up current. That's really slow. So you kind of have to make that judgment call of stay high and then dip down here. Okay. Now we go along here. There's a bunch of boats kind of sailing this way. So we kind of sailed a little bit, got a clear lane, tacked, and we're starting to sail to Red Rock. What happens? The wind shuts off. So we're like, okay, we're going to drop anchor. And we had about, actually, it's interesting. Now I look at this, we were probably about here, and you can see the depth. So 71 feet, and it goes down to 216. So we were probably in 180 feet. I don't know, we had maybe our anchor line probably had 100 feet of road. So we just dropped that. As I was dropping the anchor line, slowly feeding it down, untangling the line, my skipper was tying sheets. We had we had our heavy air sheets, right? Because we were using light air sheets. So we tied one sheet that was probably about 50 feet, another sheet, another 50 feet. So we probably had 200 feet, didn't quite catch. The anchor just didn't quite catch. So if you're doing this race, if we were to do it again, I'd probably say you know, I mean, 323 feet, probably get a good 400 feet carefully coiled, maybe, coil in 100-foot batches. And so you can maybe untie it with a little bit of twine. So you do one, drop one. If it's not catching, drop another, but you don't have to deal with a mess of 400 feet because that's a royal pain. Get just cheap polypropylene line. It's lightweight. You're not anchoring out overnight. You're anchoring for like 30 minutes or a couple hours until the wind fills in one way or the other. So, polypro line that's like quarter inch, 5/16 inch, that'll work just fine. And it's also relatively inexpensive. Sailing's an expensive sport. Whenever you can save money, good idea to do so. All right, so we did that. We tried to anchor, didn't work. We got swept out. Thankfully, we got north of the South Tower here. Why does that matter? Because this is a restricted zone. One of the boats sadly got pushed through here and DSQ. And it's not just, a trivia rules thing. There is oftentimes surf here on Fort Point, and you don't want to be doing that in a boat. So we got sucked out, and let's zoom out here because now we started our little thing. So we just, and again, I think the key thing is mentally, we weren't like stressed. We're like, okay, whatever. It's the Three Bridge Fiasco. So we're trying to sail, trying to make the boat go, and it's just like whatever. It's doing our best, but we're not getting too stressed about it. Then we see this boat, and I'm like, holy crap. This boat is pointing right at it, this ship, right? It's way on the horizon, but it's pointed right at us. And one thing that my skipper did, I was really grateful for this, was he took out so we have an outboard motor, right? And so we had taken the motor off for racing, but he put the motor mount in, put the motor on, had the motor cocked up so the motor wasn't dragging in the water. But he checked the navionics, as I mentioned, we were in the northern lane, but I still saw the bow coming right at us. I was like, I don't know, man. And so the good thing is if for some reason we weren't where we thought we were, or maybe the boat was, in the northbound lane, we weren't gonna, we weren't gonna get run over and basically kill ourselves. So we had it ready to go. We could just, the gas tank was hooked up. We could just flip the motor on. We could even, if we wanted to, if we got really close, we would probably flip the motor down, turn the motor on, leave it in neutral. So if we could wait until the very last moment and then blast out of there to get out of there. When I say last moment, I don't mean when their bow is right there over us. I mean like before they start blasting their horn at us. But we could, get out of there quickly. As soon as we shifted into full, we would then be breaking rule 42 and our race would be over. We'd have to retire from the race. But that's the kind of thing where you can just wait until the very last, get everything teed up. And so I recommend that you do that, just have everything ready to go, engine on, out of gear, stay safe. Anyway, thankfully we didn't have to do that. So the motor stayed we didn't want to take we didn't want to deal with the motor stayed kind of in that cocked up position, so it's kind of a funny way to sail the race, but it wasn't really affecting us, and we had it available to go in case the wind dropped again. Anyway, we kind of got pushed all the way out to Bonito Cove, almost out to Point Bonita, and then suddenly the westerly started filling in. So we were able to sail all the way in here. At Point Diablo, it was a whirlpool, and it was crazy. Literally, we were tacking, unintentionally tacking with the spinnaker up because it was very light, so it didn't like capsize us or anything or broach us. But it was just insane ripples going or insane whirlpools going around here. Anyway, what happened? Now, here's the thing. Another key lesson. Our friend and amazing sailor Morgan Larson, they were doing while we were kind of in the northern part of sort of the Golden Gate here, and trying to playing the north shore to get out of the current. We saw our friend Morgan Larson was doing the southern route, and he was making much more progress than us. Even though he's kind of doing this great circle route, it was working out really well, and that kind of makes sense because if you look at the currents now, this by this time. So this is 10 a.m. You see, we get sucked out here, and we're able to get up to Point Diablo because there is kind of this gap. But if you look here at maybe, probably it was around 11 o'clock, you see, yeah, there's gaps here, but there's actually reverse flow going here. So Morgan was just cruising along on the reverse flow. So we saw that and we said, okay, let's go ahead. And so this is where having a really good sense of other boats. So we basically is really key. So we basically jibed onto, I guess, port jibe, made our way over here, got over here, and as soon as we kind of felt ourselves making good progress, we started sailing for basically aiming for the South Tower here. And so yeah, you can see it really helps. There were some other boats going in here, and we're actually doing some, kind of like buoy racing tactics, keeping clear air lanes and things like that. And then another boat, Andy Schwenk on his it's called Sir Edmund. It's a big 50-foot schooner. We started kind of gauging off of him. We were right next to him, and he's twice our length, but you, minute to minute, it's not like he's going to be blasting by us. So we kind of wanted to benchmark off of him and see what he's doing. So anyway, we all eventually, probably by about noon, we finally got to the that's noon, right? Yeah, it's noon. So we finally got to the South Tower, and again, there's a hawk farm that we were tracking, and they were doing the northern route, and it was interesting. So some of us were making the southern route work, but the hawk farm was actually making the northern route work. So we did see some people kind of stand here at the North Tower for a long time, and I have been stuck here for literally hours in an ebb in the winter. So that's why I felt kind of better doing South Tower. Um, but these guys were able to make the North Tower work. So you always want to kind of track these boats sort of on the opposite side of the channel from you to see how they're doing. And one of the things we did, a little tactic, was we played the cone of the South Tower. So the South Tower is a huge concrete platform, maybe 100 feet wide. There's going to be current relief in there. So we literally were, oopsies, hang on. If we go in here, we were literally, aiming a course to just, there's sort of about kind of this direction here in line with the current. You can kind of just go right in this area. If you have to do a lot of jibes, fine, jibe every 30 seconds, but you stay in this cone till you can just sneak around. So that's another thing. Okay, so that's what we were doing. Now we were going through here, and some boats were kind of tucked into Horseshoe Bay, but the problem was they'd run out of wind. The west, so you run out of current, yes, but you also run out of wind. So you're always kind of doing that judgment to make sure that you have wind, you're getting out of the current just enough, but not killing your wind. So we passed some boats who kind of sailed up here into Horseshoe Bay. And again, we were kind of in this mode. And so our plan was to basically play the cone of Angel Island right here. So we were kind of sailing this route right here. And so Andy Schwenk and Sir Edmund and also that hawk farm that we'd been tracking, they were doing this side. They were doing the Richardson's Bay route. We did this way because we felt we'd have more wind. We weren't sure if the wind was going to turn off, be dead in Richardson's Bay or not. And we knew we'd get current here. Also, one thing about the northern route is um, you get what happens. You have tons of flow from the North Bay. So, and it kind of wants to, the water's lazy, right? It kind of wants to flow right from here. It goes from Point Stewart to Belvedere Point to Yellow Bluff to the North Tower of the bridge to Point Diablo to almost Point Bonita. So when you're going through here, you do get relief areas, but you also get current acceleration. So, you can be 20 feet off Point Diablo and you still get a ton of current. You can be 20 feet off the North Tower, you get a ton of current. So we like the southern route because it's not really showing up here, but the currents do kind of moderate. So we're going through here, and yeah, we were doing well on the Hawk Farm. We kind of caught up to Sir Edmund here. They slowed down at Belvedere Point. And so what we did was so again, we pretty much sailed right up here to Point Stewart. And the interesting thing is, again, it's not showing up, but you'll get kind of a back eddy here. So we kind of got into the back eddy. So we're getting pushed. So you kind of aim for, there's basically a house here that you can kind of see, an old, I don't know, military house or something like that as part of these parade grounds. So you kind of aim for that house. You can see that's right here in this blue section. And then you jibe and you do Point Stewart and you get kind of a nice push there. And then the current is not too crazy at Point Stewart. Um, and so that was good. So we were looking good. And then what happened was Sir Edmund and the Hawk Farm kind of tucked into here, and they did well. But then again, Elephant Rock, you get a current acceleration. So you kind of, it's sort of the tortoise and the hare, right? So they kind of slowed down there. But then we hit our acceleration point. I was not aware of this, but right here, this is Ayala Cove. Right here at this point, you can see the intensity here of the current. We slowed down here, and they spun up, and they really started going faster. So probably if I were to do this again, Point Stewart, tuck around, get some great current, get some, I guess, good current relief here, but then probably about halfway through, jibe across, because right here, right past Elephant Rock, you get really good current relief. So probably maybe even go one third of the way. Maybe even use these Belvedere Shoals. Maybe even use the Belvedere Shoals. It's not showing up here on the model, but maybe use the Belvedere Shoals here to kind of cut across, maybe just behind the Belvedere Shoals, aim just below Elephant Rock here, and then tuck in. So maybe that's what I'll try next time. Okay. Anyway, so we went to Ayala Cove. We got kind of slowed down there. Other boats were going like, oh shoot, okay, we gotta get the hell out of Dodge here. Jibed across, went here. Okay, we got here. Sir Edmund was, and Andy and Sir Edmund was, you know, kind of around here. We were around here. We saw one boat. They came ripping along, and then they, I don't know, I guess they wanted to get to the Richmond shore, and they went here, and they just get what, totally slaughtered. I mean, they got like they started they were we were here off of Bluff Point, not Point Store, Bluff Point, and kind of here they would have been way ahead of us, and they got pushed all the way down here. So you don't want to prematurely kind of go out into this current. So we kind of played this side right here, went in here, and that was good. Okay, so and then we were like, okay, well, we can just do a straight shot to Red Rock. And so we said, oh, let's minimize distance and let's go straight to Red Rock. And that was a mistake because we kind of were going upstream and we're not allowed to use this during the race. So this is why the fluency really helps. What happened was Andy Schwenk, he went and jibed and actually got really close to a barge. And I think what he was doing was basically using the cone, like using the barge. There were a bunch of construction barges here, using the barge as a current brake. And basically, so while we kind of were slogging our way through here, Andy kind of, when we were kind of slogging our way in this direction, minimizing distance, but less current, Andy kind of did this and went off here and got into this less current here. And that was a good call. He really, really opened up a big lead on us. Again, twice our size, but his rate of gain was much faster. All right. So anyway, by this time, it probably was about 2 p.m., maybe even 3 p.m. But you can see, again, this was our mistake, right? We were just kind of like doofuses sailing through all the heavy current, and you know, just just get out to the North Bay again, staying clear. Castro, the line is Castro Rock 2 and 3. So we basically sailed to around buoy 2. We jibed in, and the current now. So we're like, okay, what are we gonna do? So our plan A was to go around this way, take Red Rock to starboard. That clearly didn't work because of all this current. So plan B, go here, sail to Castro Rocks. Well, what happened was we got pushed, and then we were like, well, why don't we play the cone, the current relief, the cone of Red Rock? So we started to go, and we got so close. Oops, sorry. Okay, let's keep this up for context. We got so close to Red Rock. I mean, literally, I'm going to zoom way in here. I mean, literally, we were, we didn't. I mean, the thing is, we're going over the bottom at like probably a quarter knot. So if we had hit an underwater rock, just do a quick right turn into deeper water, and it would have been maybe a Bondo job, but it wouldn't have hurt the structural integrity of the boat. Very, very different when you're just ghosting along at like a tenth of a knot versus 4 knots, right? The kinetic energy of the boat it just isn't there, right? So it was a calculated risk. Do not do this if you're, even going 2 or 3 knots. I've done that in the past, going like 3 knots, trying to get out of current, and it's a pretty big chunk. So tenth of a knot, you're okay. And if you have a depth sounder, that's a great thing to have too. Turn it on, and that's like your primary instrument. So we started ghosting along, dead downwind. We got to here, and we just couldn't, we ran out of wind. So then, boom, we had to start reaching, and a bunch of other boats were reaching. And again, reaching, going backwards. And again, it's important to just be really flexible. So our plan C didn't work. Our plan D was reach out here, kind of get to Castro Buoy, get past Castro Buoy, and then jibe around. But this started to glass off, no wind. Meanwhile, looking around, we saw a bunch of wind. This had previously, when we had been doing plans B through D, there was more wind here than over here. Suddenly, though, that westerly started to push through. So on to plan E. So we jibed, we got pushed out here. The westerly came and we had to take down the kite. We even had to tack to get around the island, and then we reset the kite, and we drifted, and again barely got around. And then when we could do a jibe, and again, you're sailing hot angles when it's this light air, right? You're basically beam reaching the whole time. Um, and one of the key things, and this was absolutely crucial, not only did we have light air sheets, but I was holding the sheet directly from the clue. So no blocks, but the spinnaker sheet, just holding it, 2 fingers. That's how light it was. And just so I could, you know, be that responsive to every little puff. And, so absolutely crucial to be able to have that kind of dexterity with the sail. We're able to just, this is over like 15 minutes going from like here to here. Finally, my skipper made the call. We jibed, reach to reach jibe, and got around. And once you get past this apex right here, then boom, showtime. And now we're ripping along and effortlessly going. Kite goes down, jib comes up, kite comes down, and great stuff. Now we're going to zoom out because we're going a lot faster. And by this time, and I only took screenshots up until 3 p.m. So I should have taken, or yeah, 2 p.m. So yeah, so we're gonna go straight to this now. So now we're ripping along, and now there had been a bunch of boats who kind of passed us on the inside. We were doing our best. Somehow they got a little current relief or a little puff. We didn't. Again, don't stress about it. It's a long race. Um, and one of the things we did, the two things we did that worked really well. Number one thing, so I need to zoom out here. It's great when you're going with the current because you can zoom way out. Okay, so we're going from Red Rock, zoom out further. Okay, we're going from Red Rock here to Treasure Island out here. So one of the things we did was, so some boats kind of did a straight line, and for whatever reason, the westerly was stronger kind of in this section. than here. So we went a little higher, and the wind wasn't pushing through. So we just, we chose the high road and just passed 10 or 12 boats who just weren't looking around. So look around at the wind. I mean, yes, there's current, but the wind also matters. So we did that. That was great, and made things really easy. Another thing we did was we had an outboard track and an outboard jib lead. Well, we had an outboard jib lead for the sail because the wind angle is probably about 70 or 80 degrees. So too tight for a spinnaker, but definitely not, the jib was out pretty far. So we had our jib lead outboard and far out. We took the lazy sheet, meaning so we're on port tack, and so we took the start, basically the starboard tack, the sheet on the jib sheet on the starboard side, led that through. So we didn't have to rig up a new sheet, just untie it and relead it, and then led that through the outboard and forward sheet. And we had a really great sail shape on the reach there. And then trim to the middle telltale. That's another key thing. Um, if you do that, it'll be a little over trimmed on the bottom, a little under trimmed on the top, but you're getting the best overall shape that you can. Um, Pulled on a fair bit of vang, so that way it wasn't over twisted. It was just basically pull it till the upper telltale just starts to lose flow, and then ease it. So, out haul out, kind of ham off, all basic stuff. But, it's important to shift gears because it's a long leg, right? And this is probably the easiest leg. This probably took from here to here, probably took maybe an hour. And I think we set at one point the kite got to I think the wind probably got to about 100 degrees, so just aft of beam, set the kite. And again, that's another key thing. It's a long race. You got to put the effort into sail changes. Just, you got to do it. Anyway, we did this, and then eventually the wind shifted more in front. Kite comes down, jib comes in, and so again, let's lean in. So we started to encounter flood current. It wasn't that much. I mean, if it became much, we would have definitely sort of jibed out into the flats here and jibed back in. But um, again, we were probably in this area here on the shelf. Again, keep an eye on wind. You could get pretty close to TI and Yerba Buena without the wind running out. And we pretty much almost by ourselves. There was a boat, probably a 40-footer. We're trying to keep up with them. And these are the guys, they kind of were confused. They kind of almost went around this buoy. Eventually went inside when they saw us going inside because again, this is like 100 feet off. The restricted zone is like 100 feet off of Yerba Buena. And then we knew from previous observations that the least amount of the flood was actually right here. It was strongest on the shore here in Yerba Buena and here on the San Francisco city front. So we kind of went on port, called ley line to mid-span here between the two main towers. And by this time, we had running lights on and it was dark, so we were shining the flashlight or the headlamp on the telltales. And just and not getting too close to the city front because you run out of wind with all the towers. And this is where you can't really see the wind, but you just kind of have to think like from sailing you've done during the daytime, kind of just superimpose those past memories of how the wind typically is, and sort of superimpose that on your navigation here. So we sailed here, and again, pretty uneventful, just a lot of gear shifting, sometimes depowering, sometimes powering up. Always keeping an eye for other boats who had finished the race already, making sure you're staying clear of them. They may or may not see you. Let's zoom in here. So then what happened is the current definitely, and the flood current definitely has an acceleration point around Pier 39 here. So we kind of took a longer route about halfway between Alcatraz and around, no, that's Blossom Rock. Yeah, so kind of sailed about halfway between Pier 39 and Blossom Rock again. Or no, actually, I stand corrected. We actually were cutting the corner. So we had wind Yeah, we're cutting the corner. That's right. We were pretty close to Pier 39 here. And then we probably did about this track here. And then my skipper wanted to go inshore, and I knew there was a current acceleration point here, and I probably should have been a little bit more emphatic about that. So we did tack in here. That was a mistake. We did get less breeze and a current acceleration. So the one time I swore a couple times because we had a few boats behind us, and we wanted to stay between them and the net, right? So like the way you could, if we just kind of stayed a little bit, maybe a little bit of current, but plenty of breeze, low chance of them passing us. The chance they could pass us is if we did get inshore to try to get out of current, and then they sort of sailed the great circle route again. So we did that here. Thankfully, no one passed us, but it was a little dicey, right? So key thing to know around here, aquatic part, it's just an acceleration point. The flood's coming through here. It's deep, relatively deep. The concrete is fast. There's no friction really. Just the water accelerates. So not a good thing. So anyway, we tacked back out, called ley line to the Fort Mason warehouses. There's three of them. Okay. I call this, so you never want to get into in the westerly, you never want to get into the warehouse zone. Okay. I mean, you've got Fort Mason here, a hill that cuts out the wind. And by the way, the wind was kind of a southwesterly blowing like this. So you don't want to be anywhere near Fort Mason. So thankfully, we were kind of, after here, we kind of started sailing offshore, further north. And the Fort Mason, these buildings kind of cut off the wind. So we kind of sailed out here, called a ley line, and we were sailed to about, I don't know, a few boat lengths off the Gas House Cove breakwater here, ley line, and we were pretty much a little bit above ley line to this blinking light here in the cove, and and we ended up, another second mistake I made was we were about 4 or 5 boat lengths north of here, and my skipper asked if we should tack, and I hemmed and hawed. We should have done a tack and then a tack because you can cut within about maybe a boat length of this, or maybe 2 boat lengths. Uh, Keep an eye out. There are submerged rocks, so don't blame me if you hit your keel here. But call it 2 boat lengths off. You can be, maybe 30 feet. You should be safe if you're in a more 24. Um, we should have done that. We didn't do it. We sailed a little further off here, but we then did our next tack and we finished right off of, and about this time we hailed the race committee when we got to about here. And then we called Leyland. And now it's important that we called Leyland to Golden Gate Yacht Club. Why? Golden Gate Yacht Club was lit up. Expo's not lit up. The worst thing you want to do is you don't want to like come out here and then miss the line, like sail out here, tack, and then sail north of Expo and miss the line. And you don't finish. That would be bad. So call ley line. So you're kind of finishing here. So we knew that we would be well inside Expo. So around this point, we started shining the light. We'd already hailed. The race committee finished here at whatever it was, 6:58 p.m. I think this is also, we're having tracks on water speed or similar app, and not being a knucklehead like me and having it turn off is a good idea, because you can then, if there's ever any question, you can be like, hey, these are our tracks, these are our finishing. And I think I did took a video of like, here's us, here's our sail number, here's my watch, here's Golden Gate Yacht Club, here's the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, so it's all documented. So if they didn't record us, we have, a documented video just to be sure. The race committees do their best, but you know, it's always good to have that documentation just in case there's a mix up. Anyway, that was that. And what else in the recap? Then we started sailing north. I'm just trying to think if there's anything useful. Yeah, turned on the motor, and it's nice that the motor was already hooked up. Nice to be able to hook that in. And it was cold, so I'm glad we were putting layers on once it got close to sunset. So we're all bundled up, and that was pretty much it. A lot of cleanup, and yeah. So anyway, Thanks for staying with me. I know this has been a really long video, probably mind-numbing detail, but if you are ever doing the Three Bridge Fiasco, this is kind of what you can expect. It's again a 12-hour race for us, so we boiled that down into the 12-hour race and all the prep thereof into an hour. So hope that was useful for you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and thanks a lot for listening. See ya.